All right, so for today's topic, we're going to talk about discipline. I have wanted to do this topic for a while, but I've been kind of leery just because I don't want to go down the wrong rabbit hole. But we're going to talk about the types of discipline and then some other things that you should know, especially as an officer. Again, I am speaking from an Air Force officer's perspective. My viewpoint doesn't represent the Department of Defense or anyone else. This is Veronica's personal opinion. So discipline. A lot of people are like, how do you get disciplined in the military? If you didn't know, you get something called paperwork. Paperwork means you're getting a memorandum of basically a write-up of your infraction. There are 3 general types of paperwork that can be issued. LOC, which is a letter of counseling, LOA, which is a letter of admonishment, and LOR, which is a letter of reprimand. Think of CAR, CAR, so they go increasing intensity order. So C is the lowest form, then you have A, that's like mid-level, and then R, that's the highest level, and then after that it would be paperwork from your next level of chain of command and or the commander issuing you an Article 15. For paperwork, as an officer, you will more than likely have to issue paperwork. I know I hate it, I hate issuing it, I hate dealing with it, but as a leader, this is something that you will have to deal with. Also, not just officers, enlisted members do issue paperwork as well. As you start to supervise, that is kind of your first level of infractions. From an officer perspective, issuing paperwork is never fun. If you like doing it, there's probably something wrong with you, I'm not gonna lie. You should always try to allow that chain of command to take place. What I mean by that is ensure you are letting your right hand, your enlisted member, who is working with you, to make sure that all other options have been given to the person facing those infractions before you start issuing out those infractions. Depending on the severity though, it may skip straight to you, but I always try to push back and make sure that there's a clear trail of progression of discipline, so that way there's no questions. So breaking down what they are, I just want to kind of read some quick notes that I have. So obviously LOCs are kind of like the lowest level of reprimand. They're often used to address simple issues that impact the performance or job. There is no all-inclusive list of an LOC. I would always say if a person has never been issued paperwork, I would start with an LOC. LOA, a letter of admonishment, is obviously more serious than an LOC level. Most of the time, I will say, a lot of people skip from LOC and go straight to an LOR. I like to still use the LOA if it's kind of like a mid-level before I issue that LOR. Again, I have not issued a whole lot of paperwork in my life, so I hope that me talking about this doesn't make you think that I'm like the paperwork queen. I am not, but I would like to kind of see that depending on how many circumstances. Now, some people will do multiple LOCs and then go to an LOR. That's kind of like the unwritten rule in the Air Force. Not all career fields, but I will say in medical, it's mostly LOCs and then LOR. LOR obviously is the most severe administrative action you can give as a flight commander or an officer over your person who's in trouble. Ensure that people are submitting their rebuttals. A rebuttal is great. It will sometimes often persuade me, depending on the severity, to give that person a chance to downgrade the paperwork, and it just shows you that the person cares. A lot of times paperwork is viewed as like this nasty thing, but I have seen it be a great rehabilitative tool. Also, deployments being a rehabilitative tool, where I can kind of see, is it the environment? Are they just stuck in a rut? Do they need a change in scenery? Because oftentimes mental health, social norms, just what's going on in that environment can play severe factors in someone's behavior. So giving them a chance to rehab, and I know a lot of people are like, a deployment that's rewarding them. I see deployments as something that's great, and I agree. Certain infractions, I will not recommend a person to deploy, but ultimately that is the commander's call on G series orders. However, most of the time as a flight commander, I am recommending to the commander whether or not that person should go. And I would say if you're having trouble with someone, maybe see if there's a certain short stint of an environment that they can go to see how they do. If they're kind of on the cusp of, I think there's a lot of potential, they're just in their own way. And there's also that. Some people are just in their own way. And in my experience, there's more than likely in medical, you experience a lot more older people who are definitely at least 21 to 23 starting out, like I was as a second lieutenant. But then there's times where you get those babies, and they're really not babies, but I call them babies, but the 18-year-olds who have never went to college. They've never had any of that experience. So for them, unfortunately, this is their college life because they've never got to experience like what to do, what not to do. And so you have to also take that with, you know, a factor. But definitely discipline is really tough. I remember when I had to issue my first discipline, I was shaking like this so bad. I did not want to give it, but I knew it needed to be given for the infraction that that person did. It was pretty bad. But I remember being so scared and nervous. And so that's just something that you kind of have to do as an officer. Now we're going to switch into officers receiving discipline. So receiving discipline is really the kiss of death for your career. Depending on what it is, it's pretty bad. Normally, when an officer is getting paperwork, a commander has thought long and hard about it. Have been circumstances where I've heard of commanders who don't really have the best intentions and they do something like that, which is a whole nother thing in itself. But to receive it, that's not good. You don't want to get that. I would always say if you feel like you're in question of getting it, if it's something more work-related, job performance, definitely make sure you're getting your feedbacks, documenting those feedbacks, and asking for honest information. And then obviously, if it's something like a DUI, there's really nothing you can do. That is in accordance with the UCMJ. And also, not only that, they will follow with whatever the civil proceedings are. They will automatically, most of the time, independently issue you still an Article 15. They may not push for you to get out because it is kind of hard to do that. However, what happens is when it comes time for you to promote, your promotion record, that will result into a UIF, which is an unfavorable information file. A UIF stays with you in your record for a while. And so because of that, when your board, when they pull your record, they will see that if the paperwork is filed into that UIF for an officer. It also goes for enlisted too, but for officers, if someone takes that countermeasure to file it in there, they will see it. So more than likely you'll get passed over for promotion. And typically for medical AFSCs, you get I think 3 looks, and depending on your situation, the rank, you will be potentially asked to separate, and you'll have a 7-day separation. Something else that is not talked about enough too is make sure you're using your base resources. So that means EO, IG, whenever there's a formal complaint process, you should follow it if you feel like you are not being justly served or justly treated and fairly treated. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And I always recommend it to my members too. Whenever I'm a flight commander and someone comes to me and they're like, oh, this isn't fair, or I feel like this person is doing favoritism, the first thing I say is you need to go file a complaint, even if I'm the sitting flight commander, because that is the right thing to do, or go to your first sergeant, aka the first shirt or the shirt, or the commander. So that would be most of the time as an officer, your boss. And issuing paperwork is not fun, but there is a protocol to it and there's a reason why we do it. I don't ever take it lightly when I had to issue paperwork or sign paperwork. Just wanted to leave you guys with, this is a quick Veronica's perspective snippet of discipline. I think a lot of times it's very taboo to talk about, and I love talking about taboo topics because I love seeing people like squirm a little. It's so funny. But it just feels so awkward because you don't ever want to talk about people getting in trouble, or the fact that you had to do things to issue, not to them, but you had to issue things that they earned because of certain choices they made. It's not fun. It's terrible to talk about. And then you're having to deal with, you know, potential backlash, and it's emotionally draining. But accountability and being a good leader is one of the highest things you can do. And I want to leave you with this comment before I end out this video, which is, it is so hard to give honest feedback, but I think that every person deserves honesty and transparency on their performance. Instead of casting them away and talking about them, you as an officer need to be able to have those conversations, no matter how awkward, no matter if you don't know what to say. Practice it on your flight chief or your senior enlisted member who's your right hand. Practice those conversations with them until you get comfortable. But that member deserves your honest feedback, and to kind of hide behind in reports or doing certain things isn't really helping benefit them or you. It just makes it more stressed out. The best thing you can do is have those honest conversations, give them a chance to make the corrections, and then move forward. You also have to learn when to let a lot of things go. You will have to still work with people who you don't like. I even work with people who I don't like right now. Of course, none in my current job because I really like them, but I have worked with people I don't like, and it's unfortunate, but you just have to kind of be professional. And so yeah, the military is just like any other corporate job. But anyways, I hope this video kind of helps you understand what discipline is like. Obviously there's a whole more in-depth things that I could go into. I've been on a court-martial jury before, and that was really interesting perspective into our military justice system. Is that the right thing to say? But it was a very interesting experience. There's a lot more stuff that I'm leaving out, and that's on purpose because I don't want to get too niche or too in-depth into things, because I am not a JAG or a lawyer by trade, so I don't want to speak on things from that perspective, but just giving you a general synopsis of what to expect for discipline in the military is kind of what the point of this video was. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking. My hair is frizzing. This humidity. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!